Hello and welcome to Words on the Streets of COP29 here in Baku, Azerbaijan, where we look critically at issues that has been discussed in the COP. And today we're looking at the theme, energy, peace and recovery, as it's been discussed in plenary. And we will hear from participants on the streets of COP29 what they think about these issues as it's discussed in there. Let's go.
On energy in particular, for decades there was absolutely no discussion of fossil fuels, which is one of the largest source of climate crisis, and that has finally started to change in the last couple of years, thanks to grassroots movements and frontline communities being more represented at the COP, starting to share their stories, forcing governments to address the issue. But I think what we've seen, which is not a surprise, is that governments are a lot more willing to talk about building new renewable energy, but not about actually stopping the expansion of fossil fuels and constraining. Instead, they make half-hearted promises or talk about it in very careful ways, or even talk about false solutions like carbon capture or carbon markets rather than addressing the real problem. So I think that trend has continued, but we are seeing some positive momentum. I think the real core challenge for a lot of the global south is that they're very happy to do an energy transition. In fact, they want to move off of fossil fuels, but they need finance and support to do that. They need the reparations owed to them by the global north, and the rich countries have to be willing to pay up. And so last year at COP28 in Dubai, we made a lot of progress, finally for the first time mentioning fossil fuels, talking about the need to transition away from them. This year is all about, will the global north actually pay up, commit real finance and money to make that happen, both in their own countries and globally. So it's a hard discussion, but I think that's why I see energy and finance as so related, is because so much of what's blocking the energy transition is a lack of finance and a lack of willingness to contribute from the global north. So I think those two are very connected. On peace and recovery, the other really important piece here, I think there's not been nearly enough discussion. I think war and conflict and militarism is something that is not addressed in the COP nearly enough. Even for the basic emissions counting, military emissions are not counted under anyone's targets. They're simply basically ignored. We have an ongoing genocide in Gaza. We have many other crises around the world, in Sudan and DRC and so many other places experiencing war and conflict. And there's very little discussion here at COP. It's not even just very little discussion. There's actually active censorship. You're not allowed to talk about some of these things, or the countries committing the crimes, the countries still sending oil and gas to facilitate these crimes. So it's quite a repressive atmosphere in a dangerous way that I think is a real hindrance to addressing the climate crisis and the just transition that we know we need if we're not willing to talk about who's committing some of these crimes.
Yeah, I think it's important as we try to transition away from fossil fuel. It's quite pertinent that it's a just transition, particularly for people in the global south. We all know moving towards renewable energy it's something that needs to be subsidized to make it easy for especially marginalized groups, people living in rural areas, for them to be able to adopt this change. Commonly, people are using firewood to cook, they're using coals. All this is detrimental to the environment, but in order for them to be able to change and to make sure that we have a sustainable future, it's critical that these alternatives are made accessible and made affordable for them to take it up. And another important point is that local solutions are also relevant here. There are different youth startups, entrepreneurs, climate entrepreneurs, who come up with solutions in the local context that are able to address these challenges. So support for them is also critical, because it not only makes it cost effective, but it also makes it beneficial and sustainable. My call to all leaders is we are all one. We should not look at our differences, but rather we should focus on what we have in common. That is humanity. And as such, everybody everywhere it's a basic human right. And peace is something that we should respect as a human right for everyone. If you're not safe, you wouldn't think about food, you wouldn't think about anything. So that's the number one priority. And it's also with regards to climate, there's no climate justice without human rights.
I'm come from Japan. And then I'm joining this COP in a Japanese pavilion. And then we are a Nitto Denko company, and then we are providing decarbonization society. And then this COP, I'm in the first time, so very amazing. There are many people. This is difficult question, but we have a long time. So from here, we have to invest in a new technology and develop a new product. So we are contributing. We proud of contributing to providing new technology for decarbonized society in the future.
Just transition for us in South Africa has been challenging. We have experienced massive job losses. We believe that, of course, there must be a transition from fossil fuels to renewables. But whilst we're doing this, there must be proper dialogue with workers so that we understand what it actually means to us and be able to be involved in the conversations. It cannot be a situation where these policies are catapulted into us and we must just transition. We must be consulted, there must be dialogue, and we need to talk about the real effect on workers and the job losses we've seen. In South Africa, for instance, Komati Power Station was closed down, which is a coal powered power station. But what did not happen is no one had a conversation with workers around the impact that this will have with the closure. So what we've seen is massive communities that have lost jobs, and they simply have been moved and relocated to other areas. So for us, a real just transition is very important, where we talk about what that actually means. And of course, the climate finance that comes with it is an important conversation. We, in the Paris Accord, obviously it was stated that developed countries will assist developing countries. And in South Africa, for instance, we've seen massive loans that we've had to pay back in order to transform into renewable energies. But this shouldn't be the case. It should be the other way around. Developed countries should actually plow money into assisting us, reskilling, seeing how we transition into this renewables in a way that doesn't affect workers in the way that it has. So for us, it's a big topic, and this is why we're here. I mean, I'm here also under the banner of ITF. And that's our call, that it must be a real just transition. There must be dialogue. The climate finance must be spoken about, and it must really we must see real money going into this transition.
Energy is such an important component of development and economies in Africa. And when we talk about peace, I mean, I think about peace of mind, because a lot of what happens with energy extraction on the continent does not come with peace for many communities. There's a lot of militarization. We see a lot of destruction, which means people lose peace of mind because they don't have their livelihoods. They can't secure their own incomes because of the destruction that comes with the extractive industry. And in terms of recovery, I'm really hoping that with sustainable ways of engaging with energy, we can kind of recover the environment, because I think that's what we depend on. And we need to create ways of creating a world that's, greener, cleaner, and sustainable. Not in this particular COP. I think COPs represent a platform, and it's an ongoing conversation and dialogue. But what we need is reform within COP. What we need is a quicker movement, because the climate is changing, and it's affecting people right now. So for us to be looking at the process and going, it's fine if it's slow, it's not fast enough. You know what I mean? We really honestly need to put pressure on our leaders, put pressure on the COP processes to actually make tangible changes that people can feel on the ground.
And you've heard diverse views from people on the streets of COP29 here in Baku, and they have told you their own perception of what they feel about energy, peace and recovery. And we do hope that you'll follow us as we come again tomorrow on the streets of COP29. I'm Kome Odomo. Thank you.